It seems to be the case that John the prophet is talking about sufferings of the world, all the tribulations, a lot of which are being experienced in his time period, and then some he expected to happen just around the corner, and he tells about those sufferings really like 4 ways, 4 times. He has 2 long interlude sermons, and then there's the 7th time, which is the new world, new heaven, new earth. So I'm just looking at your outline, just remind you. So he starts at, I call 1, then 2, then 3, and then so the images. 1 was Revelation 4:1 to 8:1. Tribulation, especially toward Christians. You remember that? The 7 seals. Remember, it typically gets worse and worse. So there's earthquakes and famines and lions. It gets worse. And then it's sun and moon. It's real bad then. And then he rewinds. That's my reverse sound. It goes back and does the tape all over again in Revelation 8:2 to 11:18. And now it's 7 trumpets. And it's roughly the same kind of thing. It starts small and gets worse and worse and worse. And then what I call a sermon, an interlude. That's the third, Revelation 11:19 to 13:18. That's when he talks about the dragon, which is Satan, and Roman's imperial power and the prophet, which is remember that like the local priest that forced the local Christians to go worship, bow down to them. And that whole, I call it a sermon because it's like John's way of saying, here's the power behind the Roman throne. It's not so much about tribulation as it is, here's why they have their power. So you think you're worshiping Zeus, you're really worshiping Satan. Does that ring a bell, those of you who are here? Good. And then, he does, right, because we finished up last time. And then he does it 2 more times. He said, I'm not done yet. Then he's going to go and talk about 7 agents of judgment. They're really probably just angels, angelic beings. And it's going to sound and feel and smell a whole lot like chapters 8 and 9 and 10, way back on the 7 trumpets. They're going to sound very similar to that. Then he does it again, 7 bowls of wrath. It's going to sound and smell and act very similar to the 7 angels, so it's very similar. And then he gives what I call another little sermon. But this is the Satan's economic Rome, and then we have the final consummation. And every time he gives this wrath, every time he has an opening scene in heaven, there's always some opening scene in heaven, probably to encourage people. You're about to hear some bad news, but be encouraged. God's on his throne. The saints are singing. God is powerful, so when you see this coming. The first 2 times he talks about it, persecution is focused on Christian, tribulation focused on Christian. Then there's that sermon, and then the next 2 times he talks about the shift of the ages, particularly towards non-Christians, and it sounds even more violent. So the first time toward Christians, like 1/3 of the earth. But this time talks to non-Christians, like all the earth. And then he's saving up. Does that make sense? I'm trying to make sure. You see the big picture? We gotta make sure. So that's the case. And that's why a lot of times, for example, tonight we'll cover, a lot of times I'll just skip chapters 14, 15, and 16. I jump right to 17 because I go, you've heard this kind of stuff before. A lot of heavy symbolism about God dishing out his wrath or judgment on people. But instead, let's read through it. It might feel kind of, maybe hopefully not too fast, but hopefully by now you say, oh yeah, he's used to saying this way. It's saying it over and over and over and over. So any questions now that I've kind of got back to the juices going? Anything? So I'm looking at Revelation chapter 14. We just finished to remind you, this is a man a little bit, remember, so he just talked about this figure of end times who is probably playing on the Nero myth of coming back. And if that person's name has a number, remember it's probably Nero, Caesar, probably Nero, 616, 666. The point is either it literally is Nero. I tend to think it's John's way of saying there's an end time royal kingly figure that's like Nero. So it evokes Nero, who's the bad guy. It evokes a bad guy to them. That's the point. They're trying to be evocative. Much like, it's kind of hard to do this now because Trump was president, but before he was president, when someone said, man, your bathroom's like Trump, your kitchen, I mean, in movies, I'm married Trump, it meant wealth, opulence. It was named synonymous with opulence. His bedroom's full of gold and whatever. Well, they did that with Nero. Nero was the boogeyman. So whenever you play on an image or a legend about Nero, it's like, ooh, if you're in the ancient world, it sure, in this time period, it sure is. Then chapter 14, here we go. So there's an opening scene in heaven. I looked, there was on Mount Zion. So Mount Zion is, of course, literally a place. Mount Zion, Mount Sinai. Not Sinai, Mount Zion is in Jerusalem, but here it means a heavenly Jerusalem. That's a common image in Jewish literature for a heavenly realm, Mount Jerusalem. There stood the Lamb. So he sees the heavenly Jerusalem, stood the Lamb, there's Jesus, and with him 144,000. We met them before. Remember that? Remember that? Yeah, chapter 13, 16, and so. So 144,000, most think, and I am one, that just means the whole people of God. You might say all Christians. Anyway, so he meets, so now he sees a vision of the heavenly world, and this is what we call proleptic. It's kind of, I think I used this word before with y'all. You're scholars, good. Proleptic. Proleptic is when you act as if some of the future is in the present. It's kind of like seeing I saw a vision of me graduating and walking across the stage. It was so real. Surreal and so real. Anyway, so he sees this, he sees the heavenly Jerusalem, he sees Jesus standing with him, and he sees all the people of God, and his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. So they're co-identified. So they've been marked as Jesus's, which of course is very different from being marked with the numbers of the beast, which is Rome. Or you're either co-identified with Rome or you co-identified with Jesus. You can't do both. In Revelation, as all apocalyptic literature, it is either or. It is never both and. It depends, two sides of the story. It is black and white in apocalyptic literature, always. And that's one reason why the Gospel of John is similar to that. So you walk in darkness, you walk in light, and same thing here. So you have the one is they're identified as God's very own. These are Christians. Verse 2, and I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, like the sound of loud thunder. The voice was like the sound of harpers playing on the harp. So the loud thunder, we heard this by now a whole lot. Hopefully it sounds familiar. The point is, it's an authoritative voice. It sounds like God speaking. But now it sounds like harps. Harp, and this is probably where the image comes in paintings and pictures where we have angels on harps, or people playing harps and they get to heaven, as it were. This is probably in this image. Little footnote, if I've not said this already, just in case I haven't, if I had, it's worth repeating. The Christian worldview is not that people turn into angels. We do not die and turn into an angel. People, well-intended, say that stuff at funeral homes all the time, because I've been to a lot of funerals in my line of work. And if we just know God needed another angel, that's not Christian. If God does that, he's left us no evidence anywhere in any of the literature that's what happens, if that makes sense. Angelic beings are a different kind of creature than we are. Angelic beings don't have bodies. God wants us to have a body. So when we are disembodied, if I die right now and my soul leaves and I'm with Jesus in the heavenly realm, I'm still human, but I'm not really fully human yet, because he wants humans to have a body. Angelic beings, supernatural beings are different. They don't have a physical body. They'll never get one. As far as we know, they'll never get one. We don't turn into angels. So all that to say, so he hears people like harps, and they're playing on their harps. It just sounds like that. It sounds like people playing an instrument. And they sing a new song before the throne. It's a new song because it's a new deliverance. They've been delivered. It's newness. And it goes back to like Moses, which we'll talk about here in a little bit anyway. It's a new song. They've been new before the throne, before the four living creatures, and before the elders. That's all the way back to chapter 4, verse 6, verse 4. All the way back to those four living creatures. The elders probably represent his divine assembly. And so they're singing songs before the throne room. I mean, this is fantastic. They're right before God singing, and no one could listen. So that's who they are, but how did they get there? What's the characteristics of these people? No one could learn that song that they're singing, the song of deliverance, except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. So the only people who know to sing the tune of God deliver them are the people who made it because they've been redeemed. That is, Christians. So the point is, they're the only ones who are going to make it. It is to say, it is not universalistic. Revelation and apocalyptic literature is never universalist, that all people, no matter what you believe, all end up before the throne. That is not what John believed. The only people who have access are the people who have been identified with Jesus. The Father's name, Jesus' name is, as it were, marked on them. Again, I don't think literally we have the name Yeshua written on our foreheads or Yahweh. Of course not. We're co-identified as his, and only those before the throne. Verse 4, it is these who have not defiled themselves with women. That's exactly right. They're the downfall of all. I'm kidding. So, for they are, I'm just kidding you. Let's make sure you're listening. Your translation, they are chaste. Literally, they are virgins, which is weird because it's the masculine plural. They are virgins. These are the ones who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from the mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb, and in their mouth no lie was found, for they are spotless. So here are a lot of metaphors, a lot of images here. Did not defile themselves with women. Of course, almost certainly what he means is that throws back to the prophets talk this way oftentimes about the Jews defiling themselves with ancient gods, other gods and other foreign gods. And it's like they hoard around. And sometimes the prophets would say that about Israel. It says, like, you're like a donkey in heat. You're looking for ways to be unfaithful to the covenant. Faithful to me alone, Yahweh would say. That is, I'm a jealous God. You're supposed to worship me alone. But instead, you're worshiping other gods. And so almost certainly, it's a metaphor. So the point is, these are Christians who have not been spiritually unfaithful. That's all, spiritually unfaithful. You might say it that way. And they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And where did the Lamb go? He was the one who was slain. He was killed. So they follow him even to death, which all in Revelation, he praises that all the time. They're the ones who go all the way to death, wherever he goes. These have been redeemed for mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb. It's like these are the first fruits, the first things you give centuries ago, as in the, like almost they would say like tithes and offerings, is the first sign that this is the crop to come, but this is God's. This is my, I'm giving this, these are marked for him. They've been redeemed. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are spotless. Probably means they didn't lie when they came under persecution. Are you a Christian or not? They didn't say, no, I'm not. They didn't lie. They said, yes, I am. And they followed the Lamb, that's even to death, and they were redeemed. And then we find that's the drum he beats through the whole document. And if you're a Christian, you're going to get it from the state. The state does not like you. Why? Because you're fueled by Satan. They're going to ask you to confess about this, and those that stick going to the very end, they will conquer. Because they won't lie, and they'll follow the perfect example, Jesus, who also didn't lie when he was before Roman authorities. So there's an opening scene in heaven. Praise God. He says, like proleptic, I saw a vision of all God's people before the throne, and it's as if they're singing a new song. And the new song is on deliverance, but only people who can be there are Christians who have not defiled themselves with foreign gods. And when they asked who they were, they didn't lie under persecution. They even all the way to the point of martyrdom. They're the ones who made it. So John says, now pay close attention, because don't forget, they're the ones who win. When you read this next part of the message, you might go, woo, it's scary. He said, don't give up, because you can win. You can be part of that group if you'll stay in there. I'm going to go ahead unless you have any questions, comments. I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, so it's kind of in the middle now, that we might call the sky, and an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth. So here to proclaim the good news to every nation and every tribe and tongue and people, which is, of course, great, because that's the kind of people we saw before around the throne, every tribe and tongue. And he said with a loud voice, fear God, or honor God, it literally is fear, right? Be afraid of him and give him glory. That's what they said about the other emperors, fear the emperor. And, they said, no, fear God, honor and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. And worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and the fountains of water. So you worship, why? Because he's the creator. And that's a common theme through John's document, is that why? God's created because he's the one who causes things to come to be. If you remember that song I had you listen to, bless your heart, that I wrote, well, I didn't write it, it's Revelation, but I wrote the music. The song, Revelation 4:11, right? So he deserves glory and honor because he caused all things to be. So it's a common theme. The Lamb is worshipped usually because he conquered being slain. He was faithful even to death. That's what the Lamb is worshipped. God the Father is worshipped because, typically in John, because he's the creator. That's, again, a common theme. And another angel, second, followed, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink the wine of her impure passion. Now, that's a very common, everyone knows Babylon means Rome. I mean, just, it does. In Jewish literature, Christian literature, they use Babylon all the time to speak of all the bad guys, bad gals. And that was the case. And the point is, she made everybody drink her wine. She made everybody try to bow down to her. And so she's fallen. She's going downtown. Fallen, fallen, says it twice. Then another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image, which have already been here before, the beast is the kingdom of Rome. If you worship Rome and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, the point is, if you get identified, right, if you get identified with that emperor worship, or Roman worship, imperial worship, he also should drink the wine of God's wrath. So you've been drinking the wine of her passion. You've been living the high life and sexual morality and orgies and all the stuff Greg did in college. But now you're going to drink God's wrath, poured unmixed into the cup of his anger. And he shall be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So the angels and the Lamb watch the persecution. They watch that, which is interesting because other apocalyptic works, Jewish and Christian, talked about how the faithful also watch the persecution. They watch it. Like in the Apocalypse of Peter, which is more popular in the Orthodox Church for centuries, it said that saints get to watch people suffer, like ha ha ha. But that's not in John's document. He doesn't say that we watch people suffer. You might say in hell. He doesn't use that word here, and I don't either. But here, that one is they watch that. Why? Because they're the boss. They watch it, and the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. And they have no rest, day or night, these worshipers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. So here's just a foretaste. He's saying what's going to happen is, if you worship this beast, if you bow down, you are going to be punished. The smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. Now let me say that a quick word, kind of quick, about that. So a common question, I just had a question the other day about this with Bobby. Good question. Is hell. What about hell? And we're going to talk more about that later on because he's going to talk more about it later on. I try to bring these things up when they appear. Like later on tonight, we're going to talk about Antichrist because it'll come up a little later on. So when Christians for centuries have not been on the same page about the degree to which a person suffers. So before I answer that question, let me say this to be very, very clear. In the New Testament, Jesus believed very much so that Jesus believed this. I didn't write it. He didn't ask my opinion. Jesus did not believe that, as you might say, that all people go in the world to come. Everyone goes to heaven, you might say. Or I'll say world to come. The reason why, I've said this before, I said this to Elaine the other day. She said, why do you say that? I'll remind you. I tend to say world to come because that's what the rabbi said in the Talmud. David, they're not even Christians. I know. I don't say heaven as much, and you can if you want. You can still go there if you say it. It's still in the Bible, it's still in the New Testament. The reason why I tend not to say heaven is pedagogical. That is to say, because I think I can teach better. Most people, in my experience, all through denominations, every state, every denomination, every church, when they think of heaven, they think of what I mentioned last week, which is heaven is our goal, and we're wandering, roamless spirits without a body, and that's the goal. Make it to heaven. And nowhere is out in the New Testament that that's the goal of our existence, to make it, just we die, and I made it, I'm done. That's not the goal of the New Testament. The New Testament goal is the world to come, which is a new heavens, new earth, new body. It's Revelation 21. It's Isaiah 55. It's all through Paul's letters in 1 Corinthians 15. It's, on and on. So the reason why I don't use this, it is biblical, heaven is biblical. I tend not to say it as much because it conjures up people thinking of wandering souls like Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore and Ghost, or the wander around with harps or little baby angels, and I tend not to. So I tend to say world to come because people think want to think physical, corporality, which I like. I want to think physical. So Jesus did not believe that all people go there. He did not believe all people. He did not believe that. He very much believed that God the Father, Son, and Spirit will judge people. And at judgment, there are primarily two, and maybe only two, I'll call them states of being. Two states of being. He didn't talk about, I say primarily, you might say one reference in Luke's gospel when he's on the cross, and he says, today would be with me in paradise. We can talk about that if you want to. But so the two states of being. One is, I'll say heaven. You'll also hear me often say heavenly realm. I tend to throw in heavenly realm because I'm trying to stay towards, you can say heaven, that's fine, but that's my vocabulary. And the other is a place Jesus said, an actual, literal, physical place in his time called Gehenna, which in Aramaic means Valley of Hinnom. And so when your English translation comes across like this, Gehenna, but it's Gehenna. It's just outside of Jerusalem. The valley's on the south side. And at Gehenna, the valley of Gehenna is where they had a trash dump. And the trash went up. And depending on where in the city, you might say it's to the east or whatever, because I see the smoke. And people who didn't want babies typically did not abort them, because they could kill the woman. They would stick things in the womb or give them poison and whatnot. So it might kill them off. So they prefer to have the baby come out, and then you would take the umbilical cord and then dump the baby at Gehenna. So it's a trash dump. It's a place you pick up babies to become slaves, prostitutes, temple workers, whatever. But anyway, so this is typically translated hell. So Gehenna is typically translated hell. And when Jesus speaks about this place, he has different metaphors. And if it's okay for you, right now I don't want to get bogged down on this, but he'll say things like, it's a place of gnashing teeth. That is, people seem to be conscious that they're probably gnashing isn't one in anger, that they're mad they got punished. It could be one of grieving, because it depends on the biblical reference. He'll say gnashing of teeth. He'll say where the worm never dies, but he'll say there's darkness, but he'll say there's fire. Well, worms don't live in fire, and fires aren't dark. So we know, every New Testament interpreter, scholar knows that what Jesus is using is apocalyptic vocabulary to talk about this state of being. It's horrible. It's awful. Why use Gehenna? Why talk about this state of being as Gehenna? Of all the images you could use, why that one? Why not say the eternal cave? Why not say Sheol? No. He uses this image because, of course, this place of the trash dump is outside of the city gates. It's cast out, and it's horrible and disgusting. It's a trash dump. Trash dumps are gross. And he's saying it's like that. The state of being it's like that. You're cast out of the people of God. It's horrible, it's wretched, it's nasty. What image can I use? It's like worms never die there. Ugh. It's smoky and dark and fire and, bears on my. It's horrible, it's gross. Okay, so Jesus openly spoke about things. Little footnote, which is why I have no problem talking about it. I don't like talking about hell, but I'm on good biblical grounds for doing it. So this becomes the dominant view all through the New Testament. Christians have the same view. Later on, there are certain people who argued that while this is true, they would say there are references to that God's love is such that he doesn't want people to stay in Gehenna, metaphorically hell. He doesn't want them to stay there forever. And so basically it's hell on a time limit. It's like a microwave. I always think of microwave. There's a timer. So instead, you can go to heaven or heavenly realm, or you can go to a microwave hell, and you'll come out. And so the Catholics developed that idea, and they call that purgatory. So a purgatory. Now, purgatory is not biblical. It's a Roman Catholic theological, device that came from the early 3rd, 4th century, roughly. Some early church fathers talked about it. Because again, why? They could say, no, God's love eventually wins in the end over all people. That he doesn't want to punish people forever. It's not because these people were trying to distort Scripture. They're trying to come to grips with God's profound love. And what he says, which is God doesn't want anyone to suffer. Remember that in 1 Timothy, God doesn't want anybody to be punished. So they came with an idea. I don't find that persuasive. I appreciate that. I just don't find it persuasive because I'm a Protestant. I go back to the text over and over. So that's my first point, is that the Scripture talks about two states of being. And you might say places. You can say places, I guess, like a spatio-temporal place. It seems to me, when I read it, that they do not emphasize where it is, but what it's like to be there. And that's why I call it state of being, more than where it is. Does that make sense? I've met Christians who go, hell is clearly in the middle of the earth. I heard a guy at school one time, I taught at high school, and he goes, it clearly is. It's in the middle and bottom. Clearly? It's in the core of earth? It was to him as clear as can be. And if you disagree, you just don't know your Bible. You don't believe in the Bible. But okay, I have a different view. Then the question is, Christians have debated, argued for a long time about, that is to say, they've had different views on how long this lasts. Okay, so is hell basically is a place of, we might say, eternal torment, where they have conscious awareness, that is like someone pulling my fingernails out and I'm aware of it forever and ever. Conscious awareness, eternal torment. That's been the dominant view of Christians for 2,000 years. It's not the only view, but it is the dominant view, whatever that's worth. And then the second major view, which is a minor view, but it has been in the Christian church for a long time. The reason why this has been the dominant is because there are scripture verses that seem to talk about eternal torment, that seem to imply that. There are other scripture verses that seem to imply something else that we call annihilationism. Oh, Lord. Is that right? Something like that. Anyway. A-N-N. Okay. Spell check. So anyway, the point is, annihilationism is what it means to be annihilated. So you might say, yeah, your punishment is that you cease to exist. You're judged, but then he just says, poof, you're done. Some people have a hard problem with that. I have experienced in the church and read in writings, because deep down they're Platonists. Remember I said this last time, they think that humans are immortal. They have an immortal soul. That doesn't make any sense. Well, the Christian worldview, we're not immortal beings. We're not immortal souls, as Plato argued. The Jewish and Christian view is that God creates or develops a soul. We exist because he allows us to exist. And any second you don't want to exist, you stop existing. We don't need to be here. To say it philosophically, the Christian says humans are contingent beings. We're here because we were brought into being. Only God is a necessary being. He has aseity, necessary existence. So we don't have to be here. So if God allows anybody to exist ever, it's because he's sustaining it. So if you're a Platonist and you go, no, we exist forever no matter what, well, then you have a hard time with annihilation. You say, well, that can't be true. I don't find that persuasive. I'm not a Platonist. I think that it's certainly possible God can do that. So then the question is, Christians have disagreed on whether or not, that's really two major views. That's the two major views. The third was the sense of purgatory. So you get, it's a torment, but it's not eternal. It's a microwave torment. Right? But the two major views have been this or annihilation. Does that make sense what I'm saying, dude? Am I trying to? Yeah. So then you have to look at different every Bible verses. And since I'm the kind of guy that doesn't try to make it off bit, even though I love everything, I have a nice bow on it, every verse always match every other verse. I don't read the Bible that way. I try to make every author allow each author to speak for himself. And so verses like this, back to where I was going, and that is in verses 11, things like, the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. And that's a pretty good translation of the Greek, forever and ever. They have no rest day or night, these worship beings, whoever. So that it's images like that most people lean towards, that says John's view is eternal torment, that they have this forever and ever. But later on, in the exact same document, we'll see this, when he throws Satan and the Moses worship into the fiery pit. Well, what happens in the fiery pit? I mean, things burn up in a fiery pit. But there he doesn't say necessarily the smoke is, we'll talk about that. So anyway, that's one view. So it probably is the case in John's view that it means forever and ever, eternal torment. Probably. But again, just to be clear, as I can be, these views, people have these views, these chiefly have these views of eternal torment and annihilation because of scripture verses. That is, it's biblical interpretation. Not because they love Satan. They're trying to interpret the Bible well and say, it seems to me that...
Except for purgatory.
What's that?
Except for
yes, ma'am, except for purgatory. Exactly right. Now, Roman Catholics do go to a passage in, is it 1 or 2 Maccabees, that says, well, purgatory is there. And even then I say, not at all. At least I don't find that persuasive. It doesn't say purgatory. I don't know why I think they were just trying to find something. I mean, respectfully, I don't find...
Didn't the priests want to make money?
The priests want to make money?
Yeah, they would pray for people. But you would pay
in the medieval times? Oh, right. Yeah, you can come out of purgatory. Yeah, I'm thinking about mercenary motives. Yeah, I think.
Did you say medieval times? They still do it today. You still pay to have family prayed out of purgatory.
Really?
Still.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's the Catholic Church.
Indulgences.
Oh.
That's what indulgence is. They still do that?
Yeah.
Wow. They pay for annulments?
Yeah. Yeah, my mom was married in the Catholic Church 3 times.
Wow. Oh,
That's not biblical, so yeah.
It just depends on how much money you got.
When I was younger and more fiery, I'd go, that's just stupid. Why? But in my old age, I've simmered a lot and say, I respect very much. I do, I really do. I try to come to grips with, and I'm open to the idea that we can come to some theological conclusions predicated upon certain theological beliefs. So we say God is so loving and this and this and this. What are some implications of that? Or if he's going to raise from the dead, what are some implications? I'm all about that. I'll listen. I really will. And you don't have to agree with this at all. I will listen to it carefully. It's just for me, since I'm such a hardcore biblicist, I go, no matter what your conclusion is, I go, yeah, man, I hear you. Maybe. But what about this is this? I always have to, it's the but part. It's different, and that's not every time. So you might say Trinity, the concept of Trinity, which is Latin, of course, Trinitas, the Bible's not in Latin. They come to the development of Trinity. But I don't go, yeah, but. I'd say, and this idea of Father, Son, and Spirit being God kind, I can go back and point you to multiple verses that were pointing that direction. And so to me, that's a logical, theological progression. But some things to me, I don't find as persuasive. And respectfully, they'll disagree with me and say, yeah, but Mother Church said so. And I go, yeah, but she's not my mother. Yes, she is. You're just being rebellious. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. We were here first. I don't care. And then we're back there. That's how it goes. That's exactly how it goes. Respectfully, I mean, so I don't want to dismiss it just because they're trying to take theology right seriously, and I do too. I just want my theology comes out of my understanding of the biblical text, and I'm fallible at that, but I still have to follow my conscience and think I don't find that persuasive. So John's point there, it seems to be the case that goes forever and ever. The point is this bad, don't do that. Verse 12, again, another phenomenal summary statement of the entire work. Verse 12, I put a little star in my Bible. Here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So John's telling you, please, if this scares you, that you burn forever in a hell-like state. He doesn't say hell. He says tormented with fire and sulfur. If that scares you, good. Don't do it. I mean, that's John's point. It's a sermon. Don't do that. If my vision scares you to death, good. Don't do it. A little footnote, I have to say this every time. I don't have to, but I do. This is another of a billion examples where the Reformed view or Calvinist view that we don't choose for ourselves endurance, I don't find persuasive. I do not find that persuasive. It seems to me the biblical authors are hardcore about this. This is a call for the saints to endure, which the assumption is endurance is up to us. It's up to us. Well, David, it sounds like you're trying to earn salvation. I'm not earning salvation. It's if I'm a Christian and I'm saved, Lord Jesus, woohoo, and His Spirit enables me to do it. Yes, He does. I'll preach on this coming Sunday in the Philippians. Yep. God is at work within me for the desire and the absolutely. And I can say, forget you. This is all through the New Testament. It is. It's just all. This is a call for the endurance of the saints. I'm saying it one more time. If we don't have to have endurance, why call me to do that? Why demand that? Why encourage that? If I go, it's not up to me. It is up to me to keep the course. That's why it says to those who conquer. Why not? Why even bring that up? It doesn't make any sense if we don't have to conquer. It doesn't matter what you do. It's not up to you no matter what you do, because God's just going to pick you wherever you go. I don't find that biblical. I don't. And maybe that's going to bring it for you losing salvation. We can talk about it if you want, but anyway, you don't lose salvation like you lose your car keys, because salvation isn't car keys. But it seems to me in the New Testament very obvious that people can, in fact, not endure. Jesus says this in Mark 13, for the ones that endure will be saved. Why say that if that's not a challenge for us to keep enduring? If it's all up to Him, there's no need to challenge me. I go, why are you looking at me for? David, don't get pregnant. What? I can't get pregnant. That'd be the obvious response to that. The obvious response would be, if I don't care, I would say, why are you telling me to endure? It's not up to me. The point is, it is up. I have to make sure I keep the commandments of God and faith of Jesus. I have to keep them. It's like saying, I have to keep my marriage vows to stay married. You're trying to earn your marriage. I'm already married. But if you're going to keep it, keep your vows. Stay faithful. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sirree. Verse 13, I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord henceforth. So blessed, congratulations to the ones who are martyrs. That's it, the ones who die. From now on, if you die for Jesus, way to go, congratulations. And then a second voice, like again, you have to have two voices for proper testimony in court. Remember in Deuteronomy? Remember the two witnesses? They're Christians. You have to have two witnesses. And another one says, blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. Their deeds. What's their deeds? They were faithful. They kept the commandments even to death. Congratulations. High five to those who make it even through death.
Dave,
Yes, sir.
spin back. You jumped on there so quick, I didn't get a chance to get in there. So would it be right that you're saying you can't lose your salvation, but you can annul it? Just like you say you don't, your comparison to marriage. By not enduring, you can cancel it out.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So yeah, it's like in marriage, can you not lose your marriage, but can you annul it? That's probably a good analogy in my opinion. Yeah. I don't lose my marriage. I don't wake up, where'd Elaine go? She left? What happened? I lost her. The marriage is over. But I can absolutely cause for a divorce. Sure I can.
So would that transfer over then to, I mean, the whole theory, can you lose your salvation, something like that, and like you said, you don't lose it just casually or whatever. It has to be a clear blasphemy, just rejection, annulment, fill in the blank.
In my view, in fact, I might do a podcast on this because a guy sent me a link to a guy who talks about you can't lose your salvation. I've researched this for years and years, and I was just kind of going, there are some standard verses they go to. Respectfully, I think they're completely misinterpreting. So the conclusion is, my view is, yeah, you do not lose salvation. It's not something to be lost. That's not what salvation is. It's not a thing you lose. So can you lose your salvation? I'll say, well, of course not. It's not something you lose. And me too, I agree. Well, hold on a second. Can a person choose to stop being a disciple of Jesus? Yes. Yes. Jesus said that, he implied that specifically, like in Mark 13, for those who endure to the end. Jesus.
Paul speaks of several people in his letters that have abandoned the faith.
Paul says they're abandoned, and they don't always use the same word, but apostasis means rebellion, to leave. We see all this through in Hebrews chapter 6, 3 and chapter 6. The person who has once tasted the Spirit and the faith and and then they left, there's no forgiveness for them. That Hebrews saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. All through John and Revelation, there's a call for the endurance of the saints. You have to keep going on and on and on. I just don't find it persuasive, at all, that a person can't choose to stop being a Christian. Yes, I think, yes, they can. If you're a Reformed or Calvinist, what's at stake for them is the fact that they would say salvation, including faith itself, is not up to you. So the analogy I use with people who have that view, it's like what Catholics think about marriage. Because you're not married because you got married because the priest married you, which means Catholics don't get divorced. They can't get divorced. Why? Because it wasn't up to you. You don't get married. The church decides. And even then, the church doesn't divorce Catholic couples. They annul it. They come back to the priest and say, never mind, it never happened. Because you don't have the authority to divorce. Why? It was never up to you. The priest has to do it. The priest has to undo it. That's exactly that's what the Reformed tradition or Calvinist tradition thinks about salvation. That even your desire to be with him is up to him. So you can't lose something or stop something, because that means salvation is all up to you. And respectfully, and that whole system to me I find unpersuasive. Respectfully, I just do. So yeah, I do not think you can lose it. It's not car keys. Can a person say, I felt the Spirit and I know the Spirit and I gave my life to Jesus and I got baptized and I grew up and I shared the gospel with people for years and years, and I decided one day or for a slow season, I don't believe in that stuff anymore, and I forget you and I stop church and I worship Satan? Yeah, they can. They do it all the time. Yes, they do. I've met them before. I met Bart Ehrman, who's the atheist's favorite Bible scholar. He was an evangelical pastor. He preached the gospel. He shared the gospel. And that goes out of his way to say that stuff is false. There's a whole website called the Clergy Project. Thousands and thousands of ex-clergy like myself are on that website. They've abandoned the faith. They've lost it. Well, that's a metaphor. They've abandoned their faith. It's called the Clergy Project. And they have people write books. I can send you books right now you can read. I've read several of them because I want to hear what their arguments are, why Christianity is false all of a sudden. And I read them. And they go on tour around the world. I did this, I was baptized, I meant it, I believed it. I went to Wheaton College, that's a conservative school, or I went to Dallas Theological Seminary and I gave my life. I went through everything. But if you believe you can't, quote, lose your salvation, you reform, you go, no, you just discovered they never were Christians in the first place. Maybe, but that's just not what the New Testament says. It never says apostatize doesn't mean you discovered you never were a Christian. It means you rebelled. You stopped doing what you were. That's why the entire letter of Hebrews, every scholar agrees, that Hebrews is like a long sermon that's begging these Jewish Christians not to go back to Judaism because it's an inferior religion. We have the high priest. We've got the best angel. We've got this. We've got the best sacrifice. Don't go back. You need to endure. You didn't ask for all. Yeah, I think it's real. I think it's a real challenge that Christians have to stay in there. We don't lose it. No, it doesn't mean salvation is up to you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I guess I did. I always kind of thought that you couldn't lose your salvation from the standpoint that when you believe, you are made a new creation. So how do you undo the new creation? But I also see where in heaven, Satan knew everything about God, believed everything about God, and went his own way. And so that's kind of people that decide to turn their back on God still know everything, but they turn their back.
Gotcha. So for you, Satan is an analogy, perhaps, of someone who knew everything about God but still turned his back on him. Yeah, I don't know how much of that Satan, that's the word theology,
That's not a good analogy.
Satan view of him, how much of that I'm not sure how much I know. But no, but if that's what happened, that's a really good analogy of someone who, I think it's a good analogy if that's true. So some people might say, well, no, because Satan wasn't born again and so forth. But see, yeah, I guess
Yeah, what I just meant was that someone knows everything.
if someone knows everything,
experienced it, still decides, which is mind-boggling to me to believe how once you know the love of God, how do you, I don't know.
yeah, mind-boggling,
It's really
yeah.
mind-boggling there.
Yeah, I said this in a couple podcasts. When I think I said one time, what does it mean to leave the faith? I think it is that thing called "What does it mean to leave the faith?" and what's it like? And it is very much like saying, I no longer believe Elaine exists, and I was never married. I was delusional. It's very much like that. It has to be like that. Otherwise, you really weren't a Christian. That is, you might have believed facts about God. But in the New Testament, someone who's been born from above and the new creation, and Paul says in Romans 8, his love has been poured out into our hearts. This kind of religious experience he describes, that the church describes as signs and wonders and the gifts of the Spirit. I mean, it's not just a knowledge, it's a knowledge and an experience. Well, that's like my marriage. I know a lot about Elaine and marriage, and I know what it means to be in love with her. But if I said one day over time, never mind, what do you mean you did? No, I was wrong. I never was married. What do you mean you weren't married? I wasn't. I was wrong. I was duped. I guess I felt things, but it was delusional. I must have a serious illness. That has to be it's just like that to me. If you stop being a Christian, it's like that. It's like saying, you're that delusional. And I'm going to say, yeah, I found arguments and persuasive, and I really thought those were real experiences. I experienced something, but I don't believe those things anymore. And for most people, it's a slow fade, usually. And most of those people were fundamentalists. In my experience, that's very common. I can't think of too many people that we might call, what I would call, this is normal in the vocabulary, mainstream thoughtful Christians who fade out. It's the edges. It's the fundamentalists who everything's at stake, everything's a non-negotiable, 6-day creation, everything matters, and anti-science, and the one little chink in the armor, and boy, the cards just boom. That's what happened to Bart Ehrman. He was a fundamentalist. Now he's a fundamentalist on the other side, which is for atheism. So he's there's no nuance. Yeah, mind-boggling. I'm with you. I agree. It's a very painful thing. People will describe it as very, very painful. It's a very painful emotional experience. But I still would say to them, I'd still say, but it is. So how would you characterize then what your experience was? Do you suffer from a psychosis? I mean, have you been to a therapist? If they say, well, I never experienced that. So, well, then maybe you weren't a Christian. I'm not saying religion is all about experience, but I'm saying, I don't know. To me, it's like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, so thank you for that. Thank you. So I don't think you lose it. I think the New Testament, this isn't David's, I'm just trying to read as best I can, and maybe I'm wrong. Some of you are going to say, what about in John? And Jesus says, no one can snatch you out of the Father's hand. Exactly right. No one can. That's right. And in John's gospel, in that context, Jesus is saying, none of you evil, because in John's gospel, they're all bad guys. The Pharisees are bad guys. None of you people can take my disciples from me. And you're trying because you're horrible and you're trying to persuade them. It ain't going to work. None of y'all can take nothing out of my Father's hands. Why? Because you can't do it. You're not going to work. That's what he means in immediate context. The second thing is, well, I'll make it more spiritual. There's a bigger principle. Fine. Then evil can't teach people. Okay, if that's what you believe, that's fine. Cool. Then say that. That's nothing to do with whether I can decide to do that. Whether I can decide to leave the Father's hand. It means evil can't do it. But if you do believe that evil can't do it, if you think Jesus means in John, evil can't get people out of my grip, then what do you do with Mark 4? What do you do with Jesus who says, sometimes a seed is planted in a person, and before it grows blossom, what happens? The bird comes and snatches it. The devil, it says, Satan comes and takes it from him. Well, what do you do with that then? If that's your interpretation of John, if everything has to have a bow on it, I think that's problematic. So at least I don't interpret that way. I don't. I think the John passage has nothing to do with the disciple. In John 6:66, it says, and many people, the worst verse in the Bible, or maybe 6:16. But that's when it says, remember John 6 is where Jesus says, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood, and people are freaking out. What's this guy? What is wrong with him? And then he says, yeah, but, what are you going to do? They said they leave him because his teachings were too difficult. There's too much for him. They leave him. They were his disciple, and they left. And then Jesus, of course, says, are you going to leave me too? He does not say, were you pretending to be a disciple too? Were you faking it the whole time? No, he says, are you going to leave me too? The point is, they were all genuine disciples. They go, okay, that's it. I'm out. I'm out. On that happy note, here's a call for the endurance of the saints. Keep them. Okay, blessed, happy, 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 verse 14. I looked, and lo, a white cloud, that's the heavenly realm. Seated on the cloud was one like a son of man. Most interpreters take that to mean another angelic being, probably not Jesus. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but I think that's persuasive too. This is probably another angelic person. He's got a golden crown, a Stephanos crown, a victor's crown. So this is probably even a more important angel. He's just up there in the ranks. We don't know anything about this being. And he's got a sharp sickle in his hand. So all of a sudden now we're going to have a harvest. This is like a crop metaphor. Another angel came out of the temple. That's the heavenly temple. That's the heavenly realm. He calls with a loud voice to him who sat upon the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. So it's judgment time. And so he who sat upon the cloud swung his sickle on the earth was reaped. So just a metaphor for harvest, a judgment. And another angel came out of the temple in heaven. He too had a sharp sickle. Then another angel came out from the altar, the angel who has power over fire, and he called with a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, put in your sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth where its grapes were ripe. So now it's grape harvest. We all know what happens to grapes. If you've ever seen, what's the redhead?
I Love Lucy.
I Love Lucy. You know, you've seen it. I Love Lucy. You know what's coming. This is the I Love Lucy of heaven. So the angel swung his sickle on the earth and gathered the vintage of the earth and threw it on the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside of the city, and blood flowed from the winepress as high as horse's bridle. Gross. For about 1,600 stadia, which is about 200 miles. So we're talking about a lot of blood. So the point is another metaphor of grapes. So God's wrath, his judgment, is metaphorically described as God's smushing grapes. And all the grape juice, instead it's blood. There's a lot of judgment. It's very high. So he didn't give us any kind of exacts. What does that mean? But he doesn't. It's more judgment. I don't want that to happen to me. That's what you're supposed to say. So endure, John would say. Be faithful. Be faithful. I don't want to be smushed grapes, Lucy. Then I saw another portent in heaven, another sign, great and wonderful. 7 angels with 7 plagues. Oh, no. So here we are, chapter 15. So if you have your handout, we're doing it all over again. So this is another time. We're going to have 7 things. There's an opening scene in heaven. There's going to be, I'm going to this one pretty quick because I'm going to on purpose. Unless you have any questions, feel free. But you're going to see it sounds and smells like the one we just read. But of course it is. Now it's got 7 plagues. It sounds like the Exodus. It sounds like the plagues of Exodus. A little different, but which are the last. For with them the wrath of God is ended. There's this the last time through the wrath of God. And it's true. After this, we'll have more descriptions of things falling. But after this, there's no more 7 seals, 7 dancers, 7 trumpets, 7 swans of swings. This is the last one. He let you know it's the last time I'm going to tell you. And I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire. What an amazing image. Remember back in chapter 4, verse 6, before the throne room was a sea of glass? But this is mingled with fire. How does glass have fire in it? What an image. So it's like Ezekiel before the throne is this sea of, it's marked. I mean, that's amazing looking. But also it's clear and there's no chaos. It's all order. The fire is almost always fire sign of judgment. So it's a judgment seat. Those who had conquered the beast, that of course the beast is Rome. Those who beat Rome. How do they beat Rome? By being willing to be martyred by it. By willing to be martyred by it. We see that all through John's text. That's how you conquer it. You don't give up even the place of death. And its image and the number of its name standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. So now they've got, again, they're singing a tune again. And what's their song? They sing the Song of Moses. Now the Song of Moses is back to, of course, Exodus. Remember, after the Exodus, it's called the Song of Moses. And they sing a new song. Why? Because God delivered them out of Egypt. And they turn around and write a tune about it. God delivered us out of Egypt. It goes just like that. He told me. And the servant of God, so they sing this brand new song of deliverance, right? It's the same song before, just the same song he was already talking about, just another way of describing the same song. And the song of the Lamb. So the song, magnifying the Lamb, talking about the Lamb. And it says this, great and wonderful are your deeds, O Lord God the Almighty. You're just and true are your ways, O King of the ages. Who shall not fear and glorify your name, O Lord? For you alone are holy. All nations shall come and worship you, for your judgments have been revealed. So again, we have an opening scene. It's encouraging because they're singing songs. They don't get killed by Rome, and God goes, no. God restores them, victorious. They're singing a new song of deliverance. And he says, okay, good. You feel hopeful? Good. Now let me tell some descriptions of horrible wrath to come. After this, I looked at the temple of the tent of witness in heaven was open. Now it's a tabernacle. Earlier it was the temple, now it's the tabernacle. It's another metaphor for heavenly realm. And in verse 6, and out of the temple. So now we have that too. So he loves it. These are just metaphor upon metaphor. God's heavenly realm, right? Out of this temple came 7 angels with the 7 plagues, robed in pure white bright linen, and their breasts girded with golden girdles. So these are majestic, royal-looking angelic figures. One of the 4 living creatures gave the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. Like 7 bowls of salsa. So a metaphor, he's got 7 plagues coming, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. That's a theophany. Every time there's always the smoke represents God's presence. Of course, a Jew would go, of course it has smoke. Yep. His power, no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were ended. Uh-oh. I can't go to his presence. That image I just saw, the vision of the 144,000, you can't get there yet. You have to wait until the tribulation's over. That's the way of saying you got to wait. You can't go there right now. Then I heard a voice, it's really literally and I saw, or heard rather, a loud voice from the temple telling the 7 angels, go and pour down the earth the 7 bowls of the wrath of God. So the first angel went and poured his bowl on the earth, and foul and evil sores came upon the men who bore the mark of the beast and worship his image. So again, these are non-Christians. These are non-faithful, and God, they get junk all over them, which sounds like chapter 8, verse 7. These are very similar. The second angel poured his bowl into the sea, that's salt water, and it became like the blood of a dead man. Every living thing died that was in the sea, so salt water's dead. The third angel attacks fresh water. That's the rivers and the fountains of water. They became blood. I heard the angel of the water say, just are you in these judgments? That is, you're just, you're righteous. That is, you're good for doing this, God. For you are the Holy One. For men have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink. It's their due. It's their just deserts. It's these kind of images, little footnote. I do the little footnote sermons that I think about when people talk about in song and praise tunes. God's my buddy. He's my co-pilot. Man, the biblical picture is different. And I heard the altar cry, yes, Lord God, the Almighty, true and just are your judgments. So, man, you might get mad about them. They deserve it. These are people are corrupt, evil sinners. Verse 8, the fourth angel poured his bowl on the sun, like in chapter 8. So the sun gets darkened in chapter 8. Here it was allowed, remember chapter 8, verse 12? It was a third of the stars in the sun, so the days a third shorter and third, all that stuff. And now the sun's is allowed to scorch men with fire, so he turns up the heat on the sun. It gets hotter and hotter. And Greg's going, that could only happen if the sun expanded, which one day it might do. Men were scorched by the fierce heat, because clearly it starts in Texas, and they cursed the name of God, who had power over these plagues, and they did not repent and give him glory. That's John's way of letting you and me know that's the purpose of this. God is not yet punishing them in full. He's trying to give them another chance to give up and repent. Won't you repent? It's like God giving spanking after spanking after spanking. Say you're sorry. Stop doing this. Repent. Don't you understand who I am? Stop. That's the purpose of the plagues, is repentance, if you're a non-Christian. If you're a Christian, we saw early on, the purpose is steadfastness, purity. It tests your faith. But if you're a non-Christian, he wants you to repent, but they wouldn't do it. The fifth angel poured his bowl on the throne of the beast. That's the kingdom of Rome. And its kingdom was in darkness. That's like in chapter 9, verse 2 and 5. Darkness. Men gnawed their tongues in anguish and cursed the God of heaven for their pain and sores and did not repent of their deeds. Still won't do it. The scorching heat, or it's total darkness. Verse 12, the sixth angel poured his bowl in the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. So now he's changing gears a whole lot, a different metaphor. So far he's been talking about stuff that people would have basically, they're cosmological, physical things. Here he's evoking a different image, and this is what we'll talk about here. Good, we have some time. And that is your river Euphrates. If you have a Bible, study Bible in the back, you'll have a Bible mat back there. It'll tell you that's right in the middle of the Mesopotamian cultures. River Euphrates, it's still there. Big river. The point here is saying the angel poured his wrath, that is, he dried up the river to get ready for the kings of the far east. East of whom? East of China? No, because he's writing to people in Rome, and so it's to their east. Well, again, the bad guys live to the east. They're the Parthians. And so he's evoking an image they would have known to be scary, but he's casting it to be cosmic, like end times big deal. He's using an image they know to be scary, but he's casting it in an end times cosmic thing. So he's saying, these armies are going to get ready. And this is like another one of the Nero myths, is that Nero didn't die. Remember, one myth is that legend is that he didn't die. He ran off to the east to the Parthians, with whom he had garnered peace with, a literal peace treaty at one point. And he's going to come back with the Parthians and kill the Romans. And so you told the Roman kids that's your boogeyman story at nighttime. And he's saying, it's going to be like that. That wrath is going to dry up the Euphrates, and now they can get across easily. Verse 13, and I saw issuing from the mouth of Satan, the dragon, and from the mouth of the beast, that's Rome, and from the mouth of the false prophet, that's the imperial cult, that's the false trinity. The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. So Satan is fueling the beast, which is Rome, and Rome has a voice, a mouthpiece, that's the emperor cult. That's the priest of the local Zeus temple, or the police that come make you go worship that. That's the false trinity. I heard from the mouth of this false prophet 3 foul spirits like frogs. Like this is like evil message. It's an evil message. Why? Verse 14, because they're demonic spirits. But we already know that because we know this, that's fueled by Satan. We're not surprised that when they talk, it's demonic. Performing signs. Remember that earlier? He said that. Remember I gave you the example of some of the Roman authors to talk about. They take the windpipes of the long cranes, the birds, they put them inside a temple. That means they put them inside the statue, and they can talk through the hole. It dupes the people. They create signs like that. They can produce false lightning, false thunder. So they're performing signs. They go abroad to the kings of the whole world to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. So now Rome and its false prophet imperial cult, they join forces with other human leaders who are also evil to fight against God. Now this is classic end time scary. So again, one more time, it's using an image that's already scary. The Parthians coming back to attack us. He said, yeah, it's like that. It's like that worse. We might use 9/11. It's like the 2 great towers blown down by an airplane. That's scary. I remember where I was. Everybody knows where they were when you first heard the news and what you did. It was scary. You go, would that happen again? Or when the bomb went off, or whatever it is. He's saying it's like that. but across what they would call the known world. And then verse 15, he throws this little aside. It's almost straight out of Mark 14:51. Look, I'm coming like a thief. Blessed is he who is awake, keeping his garments that he might not go naked and be seen exposed. Woo! You don't want to be caught unaware. You want your clothes on, sister. That's what I'm talking about. 1 Thessalonians 5:2, right, says he'd be like a thief in the night. He said, I'm coming like a thief. Now, why would he add that little aside all of a sudden? Look, I'm coming like a thief. Probably to get you ready. Oh, my goodness. I don't want to be on the bad side of this battle. It's apparently going to happen. I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready. I'm ready. A little footnote if you want to know this, because if anybody's a nerd like I am, the word for awake, let me find out what it is. Verse 15. Yeah, the word awake. If you use it it's a grigoron, but if you use it in the imperatival mood, it's grigareti. Grigareti. It's the word Gregory. Gregory is Greek. It means watch out, be vigilant. That's the same Greek word Jesus says, not even the Son, no one knows the time. Remember, he says, only the Father, not the Son or his angels. So instead, what? Watch out. Or Gregory, Grigariti, watch out, be vigilant. And then he tells a parable about virgins who are trying to keep their oil in a lamp. So just be ready, be ready, be ready. Instead we go, sounds good, let's make a chart of exactly when this is going to happen and write billions of books. Nope, I didn't say that. I said be ready. Good, let's make a whole movie series on when it's going to happen. Okay, I'll stop, I'm preaching. That's what Americans do. No, I got to figure it out. There's code words. Not even the Son knows. Okay, verse 16. And they assembled it at the place which is called in Hebrew, Armageddon. Armageddon. Okay, so the end. Okay, Armageddon. Let's talk about this, because this is the only time it's mentioned. So Armageddon, Armageddon, is Hebrew and Aramaic. It literally means mountain of Megiddo. Mountain of Megiddo. Megiddo is a valley. It's an actual physical place, like Gehenna is a real trash dump. Megiddo is a real place. You can go there today. I've been there. It's near Mount Carmel, which is the traditional spot where Elijah brought down the fire on the altar. You can go up real high and look down. It's really beautiful. You can do a Google search on Megiddo. I think it's beautiful. You can see like kind of what had crops or whatever it was. You can see for miles because you're so high. And then way on the other side is something. But it's a massive valley. And historically, it was a very good, popular place to have battles because it's a big, fat, open plain. In fact, the great King Josiah, outside of King David, Josiah's the second favorite. Josiah died at the Valley of Megiddo at a battle. And so we have these kind of examples in 1 or 2 Kings and other places. And Megiddo is a place of battle. The thing is, Megiddo doesn't have a mountain. Megiddo's, like I said, Megiddo is a valley. There is no mountain of Megiddo. It doesn't exist. Which is another reason why virtually all New Testament scholars believe this is just a mythical place. There's no mountain. There is no Armageddon.
Well,
There's
it's
no.
a tell, isn't it?
What's that?
Megiddo is a tell.
Tell of Megiddo.
Yeah.
The town has been built up.
The towns are built on little tells over time, right?
Right.
But the valley is Megiddo, and the time period is just, and still is there, the valley. There was no mountain at all, no tell. I mean, you can go on either side of the valley of Megiddo, but there is no mountain of Megiddo.
You're saying the city, okay. Because we've been to Megiddo, and it's high now, but you're saying that it was built because the city was built. There's a high point now, as you visit it, you can look into the valley, but it's not a mountain.
Well, there's a location near the valley of Megiddo, right?
Right.
But Megiddo is the valley. So there's a little tell that you go on top. Yeah, I've been there too. Correct. But that's not the mountain because the Megiddo itself is the valley. So if you go back to the Old Testament, in other Jewish sources too, they reference that flat valley area is Megiddo. That's Megiddo. So he's referencing an image that if you're Jewish, you know your Bible a little bit, and you say, oh, Megiddo, that's the place where we have battles for a long time. And that's like an end-time battle is going to be at this place. Of course, it's this last place of the theological battle, right? It's just an image of that. Now, later on, we're going to see what happens here because people, we'll talk about this not tonight, but we'll go on. We'll see that the idea here so far is that this Rome and its imperial powers gets other human kings to join forces to fight against God at this classic battlefield. We'll just see what happens. The seventh angel poured his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple, that's from heaven, heavenly realm, from the throne. So that means it's God, the Father, or the Lamb, saying, it's done. Gegonen in Greek. Gegonen. It's done. It's over. And there were flashes of lightning, voices, peals of thunder, and a great earthquake, such as never been heard since men were on the earth. So great was that earthquake. Every time God shows up somewhere, there's earthquake and lightning and thunder and whatever. It's the biggest one ever, he says. Oh, man. The great city was split into 3 parts, probably complete. So the great city, that's Babylon or Rome, it's divided. And the cities of the nations fell. That's all these other nations around that gathered together. And God remembered great Babylon, Rome, to make her drain the cup of fury of his wrath. Remember, meaning he did something about it, not mean, oh, I almost forgot. That's like in the Hebrew when it says, God, don't forget me, or God, remember me. It doesn't mean God has bad memory. It's saying do something about it. He's saying God remembered Rome. He punished her. And every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. And great hailstones, heavy as 100 weight, dropped on men from heaven till men cursed God for the plague of the hail. So fearful was that plague. That is, there's still no repentance. They're still cursing God. Instead of, okay, I give up. You deserve worship because you're the mightiest God, not Zeus, but you. They still don't do it. That's it. So they gather together, and God sends down hail and kills everybody. Now later on, we're going to talk more about this so-called battle. There is no battle. There never, ever is a battle. There is no battle. Before you lose your faith, there is no battle. I know. I'm sorry, Tim LaHaye. Actually, I'm not sorry, Tim LaHaye. I'm not at all sorry, Tim LaHaye. But we'll talk more about that, this so-called battle later on. Let's see. Okay. Can I go ahead to chapter 17 if I can? I was trying to, if I can, I want to finish 17 if I can. I know I was going to stop at 8. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I don't think I'm not going too fast. So here's an example, of course, God's saying he's going to get them. He's going to they're going to get the bad guys. So he does. Then one of the 7 angels who had 7 bowls came to me and said, hey, come, I want to show you the judgment of the great harlot who was seated upon many waters. I might pause there and go, I thought I just did. I thought, angel, I just saw the judgment of Rome. It's split in 3 parts. It's over. See, that's apocalyptic literature. Hey, you want to see what I just showed you? Over and over and over. Sure, watch the tape again. It's a different movie. But it's the same plot. Hallmark. So Revelation is Hallmark from hell.
Thank you.
In a nutshell. If there's anything you remember, you're welcome. You're welcome. Price of admission was worth. Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot, of course, who seat on many waters. Waters probably means a sense of many people. Many people, many waters. That is to say, there's a lot of people. This country is huge. Now, with whom? Sorry. Of the great harlot, prostitute, whore. And Jews talk that way about people groups. For example, in Isaiah 23:16, the city of Tyre, Tyre, Tyre's in the north, and Tyre is called a harlot or a prostitute because it's going to foreign gods. And Nahum, the prophet Nahum 3:4, it's Nineveh. Nineveh's a prostitute or a harlot. Here, he uses the same imagery that they've always used in Judaism, which is a prostitute. He means a people group, a nation. It's not Tyre, it's not Nineveh. Of course, most scholars think it means Rome. So that's the whore that people can sleep with, which means spiritual unfaithfulness, right? So with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, that all these kings, these pagan kings, and with the wine of those fornication, whose fornication, the dwellers on earth have become drunk. So everybody, we all know, wink, wink, we all know, everybody has joined in to the Roman imperial power. Now, if we pause for a second, no, it hasn't. There's no Mayan kings. There's no Native American Cherokee who are bowing at the feet of Rome. They're not Chinese kings. But of course not. That's not his point. It's John of Patmos on Patmos Island in the Roman Empire talking to people who were in Asia Minor and Roman Empire. And the Roman is the whole world to them. It's everything. So again, it's, as my son would say, it's a hyperbole. He said that one time, we never let it go. It's hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. It's an exaggeration. He's saying all the kings, everybody knows, you can see him shaking his head, everybody knows they've all lived off of Rome. They've used all what she's got to give them. They're all a bunch of fornicators. which is false gods. They all bow down at the feet of the emperors. And he carried me away in the spirit. He had a vision. It's a prophetic spirit. He had a vision into a wilderness, and I saw a woman. Now before he had a vision, it's like in the stars. Remember that? Remember that the woman had the moon as her feet? It's like it's like, oh, I look up there. Now he's not taking her out to look out in space. We would say space. It's the sky, night sky. Now he's going into the wilderness, and he sees a woman sitting on a. Now I'm going to read a lot of this, and we'll go back because John actually unpacks what these images mean. So I'll read through for a little while here. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet, so a red beast, which was full of blasphemous names. It is because the emperors called themselves God, sons of God, deity. And it had 7 heads and 10 horns. He'll tell us what that means in a second. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. That's purple and red because it's royalty, a sign of wealth and royalty. And she's bedecked with gold and jewels and pearls, so she is loaded. At the time period, you might say, well, y'all have got that on your neck right now. Not in the ancient world. I mean, you have to be rich to have this jewelry. And she's holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations, like Diet Pepsi, and the impurities of her fornication. So the point is she's got a cup she's allowing everybody else to drink. Everybody can come worship me. Everybody's influenced by her nastiness. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, that is a mystery to be revealed. That's the point. And now it's revealed. He's going to tell us what the name is. Babylon the Great, mother of horrors and earth's abominations. And this mystery, wink, 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 they're going to go, because that's Rome. Rome's this great, she's the mother of all prostitute whores. She lends herself off to everybody to get spiritual adultery. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So this woman has been killing Christians for a while. Now in the vision, now it's by this point a lot. So this is more of a future vision. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. Wouldn't you? I would marvel greatly. And the angel said to me, why you marvel? Did you see what you just saw? He says, I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns and carries her. Now the angel is going to say, let me explain to you what you just saw. But pause for a second. This is why most interpreters would say, in apocalyptic literature, you're supposed to go, like there's a big red dragon's tail is a third of the stars. You're supposed to be either that or disgusted. 200 miles of blood, that's gross. Here's a call for endurance. They burn forever. Oh my goodness, here's a call for endurance. You're supposed to follow that first emotional thing versus kind of unpacking the joke and it's no longer funny. But he's going to explain the image he just saw. Verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not and is to ascend from the bottomless pit and go to perdition. So it's a king, you might say it's a leader, some kind of leader who died, who was and is not, and is to ascend from the bottomless pit. So he's in a bottomless pit and he's going to go to perdition or hell, suffering. So this is end time figure, and again, this also plays on a legend about Nero, who didn't really die. I've told you this before. The idea is he might have committed suicide. People thought he died, but he didn't die. No, he did die. But the boogeyman stories was he never died. He almost died. He went off to the Parthians. He's going to come back. So he's playing off that image of this king, this last leader who's a bad guy. Eventually, he's going to go to hell, but not yet. Eventually, he will, and he will in Revelation. And the dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of the life from the foundation of the world, that's non-Christians, they're going to marvel to behold the beast. This, wow, because it was and is not and is to come. They're going to say, you hear that? Who was and is not and is to come is exact opposite of God the Father, who was and is to come. So this is, again, he's a perversion of deity. And John says, this calls for a mind with wisdom. That is, I want you to understand this, wise Christians. Understand the image. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. And everybody knows in the time period that the story is that Rome sat on top of 7 hills. 7 hills. That's around, they all said that, basically, in their literature. So that's the 7 mountains, 7 hills. That's Rome. So the 7 heads are 7 mountains, which woman is seated. Not only are the hills, thanks a lot, we'd say, can you just keep my images to one at a time? He's going to give you another one. They're not only just hills, they're also kings. So the heads are both hills and kings. 5 of whom have fallen, they're dead. 1 is, and the other has not yet come. Of course, how many is that total? 7, of course. And so it's the complete number of kings, of Roman leaders, emperors. So 5 have come, one is, and one, the point is they're right on the cusp of this new age. And this is where a lot of interpreters like to count out all the kings. Well, if you go by Trajan, there's no way to know what he has in mind. And I don't think he has anyone in mind. I think the point is, whatever emperor is right then is right on the cusp of a new bad guy. You're on the cusp. And when he comes, he must remain only for a little while. Only for a little while. That last king, we're almost there, and he's going to be in power just for a little bit. Verse 11, as for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th king, but it belongs to the 7 and it goes to perdition. So it's like the other 7 because it's evil. But this one, this last end time one, will eventually be sent to hell. Perdition, hell. There's one last guy, which I'll talk about Antichrist in a second. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. So Rome, the beast, this last end time emperor bad guy, gives his authority to other human kings. 10 is an inclusive number, that is just a number. He gives them also authority for 1 hour, for a little bit. So the point is, this is another image of the different evil forces are going to gather together on earth, just for a short while. Now, so what? Verse 13, they're one mind, and give over their power and authority to the beast. That these kings say, I'm with you, Rome. I'm with you, this main bad guy, Roman emperor. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will do what? Give up? Struggle? Have a hard time? No, the Lamb is going to conquer them. Why? For he's the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. And those who are him called and chosen and faithful. So this end time, I'm going to come back in a second. He's going to get with other human kings. They're going to fight back, but they're going to lose because the Lamb doesn't lose. He's the King of Kings. Then he says, and he said to me, the waters that you saw where the whore is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. She's sitting on top of all kinds of people. That's true in Rome. I mean, it's not a melting pot, but there's people all over they would say, the known world there. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the harlot. So these leaders, these end-time emperors, will actually hate Rome. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her. So it's self-destructive. They're going to turn on herself. That's what evil does. It's so horrible and gross, it's going to turn on itself. And by the way, that is what happened. It actually is what happened. That one of the reasons why Rome fell in the 5th century, I mean, we had people like, just lost his name because I'm thinking of Lord of the Rings. I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, around 410, I just had it again. In AD 410, when it fell again, it sacked Rome. One of the reasons it kept being sacked from these Germanic tribes is because it had all this inner turmoil. The emperors kept attacking each other and backbiting and on and on. Alaric, that's his name, Alaric. Anyway, that's what happens. They're going to make her desolate and naked. Verse 17, for God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and giving over the royal power to the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. He's saying God wants these people to be self-destructive until the words of God will be fulfilled. That is the time until Judgment Day. God wants it to be the case that these emperors get up and end up fighting each other. It's not mystery. It's not an accident. God wants this to happen. And the woman that you saw is a great city which has dominion over the kings of the earth. And in the time period, that's one, and that's Rome. There's only one city that has dominion over all. So you're talking about some metaphors. It seems to me those are amazing. So he sees, one more time, if I can try to summarize with taking away the metaphor, which I'm sorry to do that if this helps. He sees a vision in the wilderness of Rome, who's like a big whore, who's been giving out her wares to everybody, and everybody wants it. They bow down quickly to her. And I see that they have a line of different heads and different kings and leaders. A lot have come. There's one right now, and there's one coming not long from now that's going to end the whole series of emperors. There's also going to be this one main bad guy who's like those emperors, but he's a little different. This guy will help lead Rome to join forces with other humans, and they're going to fight. They're going to lose, but they're going to try to fight. Not fight, they're going to try to fight. So, this last beast, so this is oftentimes people say this must be something called the Antichrist. Before I move on to that, which I want to talk about here, are there any questions or comments about this so far? Anything at all? So in John's view, it sure seems he thinks that this tribulation has been going on, but we're on the cusp of it getting really, really bad. And it's going to get so bad, it's going to get almost cosmic. But the Lamb's going to step in and say it's over. It's going to get cosmic, getting big. Okay. Nope. Nothing? Okay. Okay. In the New Testament, there is only one author in the whole Bible that mentions someone called Antichrist. Antichristo. Anti in Greek means instead of. It can mean against. And it comes from John. And it, maybe because of time we can't, I don't know. Okay, for fun, real quickly, we'll look at 1 John. So if you want to know more about this, real quickly, we'll go to 1 John. So go back in your New Testament a little bit, or your Bible app. Do you want to do this or not? We can move on.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to assume it. I went too far while I was talking. In 1 John chapter 2, we'll start at verse 18. 2:18. Okay. This is the only reference in the Bible to a single Antichrist figure. One. And you're about to read it. So in 18, do you have it? 1 John 2:18. Children, it means like disciples. It is the last hour. That's apocalyptic. That is, it's almost time up. And as you have heard, that Antichrist is coming. That's it. That's the one reference in the entire Bible of this Antichrist. Whoever this is, this figure that is, again, against Christ instead of Christ, probably against is probably best. That's it. Which is why I never talk about the Antichrist, unless I'm talking about this one verse in 1 John chapter 2:18. That's it. It's only on the whole Bible. Because then John goes on and says, so now many antichrists have come. So it seems to me, you might disagree, but this is pretty common interpretation. It seems to be the case that John imagines some kind of evil power that's at work in some kind of, is it a person? Is it a being? I mean, a human person? Is it angelic? We don't know. Just a thing called the against Christ one. But that, whatever it is that fuels that against Christ one, also has fueled all kinds of people already. Therefore, we know that it is the last hour. He's saying, here's how we know the end is here. Because we've met many people who are the Antichrist. You never hear that. Well, you will from me, but other people, don't preach that. Because that's how you know it's the last hour. They went out from us. You know, he's talking about humans. He from his church. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us, but they went out. That it might be plain that they are all not of us. Little footnote, that's one of the classic places to go to for, quote, losing your salvation. They think that means these people were never saved in the first place, and this applies to all people who ever leave a church. That's possible. I don't find that persuasive at all, but that's possible. So in John's text here, he's saying there are people who came to our church and they left. And a sign that they are not, that they weren't with us as a community is that they left us. And I go, of course, John, but there's your sign. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all know. I write to you not because you don't know the truth, but because you know it, and know that no lie is of the truth. Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Messiah, or Christ? This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son. Now, no one who denies the Son has the Father, who confesses the Son has the Father also. John's point, and all through the letter, you can read all the letters yourself. John's point is there are people, we call them schismatics, because they're schismata, they left. These people left the church, and they're saying Jesus really isn't in the flesh. That's it. They think Jesus looked like he was human. He seemed to be. The Greek word for seem is dokeo. He seems it. So they call them docetics. People who look Jesus, it's kind of like a lot of Christians. Most Christians in my experience think Jesus is like Superman. He looks like us on the outside, but on the inside he's impenetrable to bullets. And that's not the New Testament view. But anyway, it's like that with them. They think, well, he looked human, but he really wasn't. He was just a walking divine figure. He wasn't human at all. And they would say that person is the Antichrist because you're denying that the Father and Son really are who they are.
But those aren't people that never believed in the first place. Those were people that believed and went astray.
So these are not people who believe.
These are not people that never believed in Christ.
These aren't people who never believe in Christ. I don't know, because John doesn't tell us exactly what they believed initially. That's a good question. That's another reason why I don't find this had anything to do with the losing salvation debate. We don't know if these people always thought this. Did they join the church at Hill Church coming in already believing that Jesus really wasn't in the flesh?
Because then all atheists would be Antichrist.
Then all atheists are Antichrist. That's right. Then anybody who thinks that, well, no, not atheists, but people, if they're atheists, if they believe Jesus looked like that. But atheists typically say Jesus wasn't divine at all. These people would say he was only divine in that sense. Does that make sense? We don't know if they had that belief coming in. If that's the case, we argue, well, they're not Christians, because that's not the Christian view. It's not that he was just Superman walking among us. He was the God-man. He didn't just seem human. He was human too. He had a human nature and divine nature. And then 20, yeah, I'll move on from that. Then chapter 4, verse 3, he says, every spirit which does not confess Jesus is not of God. This is the spirit of Antichristo, of which you heard that it was coming, and now it is in the world already. Now it is in the world already. And he says the same thing in 2 John verse 7. So in my interpretation, John does not have a necessarily end-time human figure in mind. He has this evil spirit, like a demonic spirit that he calls the Antichrist Spirit. A demonic spirit that tells a person that they're against Christ. In John's view, in his congregation, I know some people like that. They're the people who are against Christ. Why? What makes you think they were against Christ? Because they say they didn't come in the flesh. You can't say that. If you said that, you're really against Christ, because I know who he was. And they've already come. You say, yeah, I know a lot of those. They must have had that demonic spirit. I know some guys had a demonic spirit of materialism. I know a demonic spirit have called this. And they had the one called the Antichrist Spirit. Why? Because they were against who Christ really was. That's it. There's the whole, so there you go. 1 John 2, chapter 4, and then 2 John 7. Yeah.
Wouldn't that make the Jews that think the Messiah hasn't yet come Antichrist? That was a question.
So a question online was, wouldn't that make the Jews who don't think the Messiah has already come Antichrist? I don't think so, because the key there, John might say that anybody who believes, maybe I'm wrong. I think John would say any person who has an evil spirit which leads them to believe anything against Jesus as who he is, then they have the spirit of the Antichrist. It doesn't mean anyone who believes it has the spirit of Antichrist. Because I don't think so. I don't think John would say, if you ever think Jesus was a good guy and he was a good moral teacher, but I wouldn't say he's divine, you have the spirit of Antichrist. I mean, John might say that. I don't know. He might say that. I don't think so. But in John's context, in John's church, he has one group of people in mind. One group. And it's a group of people who say Jesus is really not the Messiah because he didn't come in the flesh. He didn't come in the flesh. He seemed like he was in the flesh. Those people must be influenced by an evil spirit. How could they say such a thing? We'll call it the Antichrist spirit. So I don't think all Jews have the Antichrist spirit. I don't think so, and I don't think that's John's point. I don't think so. And that's it. I mean, there's no, yeah.
So, in summary, what you're saying is to take the John references of Antichrist and translate them over to the beast or the king to come, and so forth. That is in error.
Well, yeah. So what you're saying is, if I apply the John Antichrist over to Revelation, that's an error. That was my second point, was to say, everybody does that. Not in scholarship. Well, some do in scholarship too, frankly. Almost everybody takes what John says here about this particular instance and say every time anybody in the New Testament talks about end times or a bad guy, it's the Antichrist. I don't do that. Because I don't find them persuasive. I don't find them persuasive. I want to use the vocabulary they used And John of Patmos never says Antichrist.
You could say that they have the spirit of Antichrist.
They have the spirit of Antichrist.
But they just use the noun Antichrist as definition of who the person is.
So they might have the spirit of Antichrist, but maybe not the noun. My response to that might be, well, maybe. I would need more, for me, this is for me, you don't have to be, I would want more information from John the Elder, who wrote 1 and 2 John, 1 and 2, 3 John. I want more information, more data. Okay, tell me more about this spirit of Antichrist. Tell me more about that. And how did you come to that conclusion? What makes you think, is it every single time a person thinks he's only divine and not human? Is like a slice, that kind of person? The people you're talking about? Or would you apply that in general? Anytime anybody thinks against Jesus, that's the demonic spirit called Antichrist spirit. And I don't know what he would say about that. I just don't, so that's I don't know. So that's why I tend to go, I don't know. I don't know what he would say about that. Because I can't say the answer to that question, I don't feel comfortable applying it to any time there's a person who's opposed to Jesus. If that makes sense. Any time a person is opposed to Jesus, I'm not convinced John would say that.
Right now, where we're at in Revelation, we're talking about the word Antichrist.
That's right. So in John's text in Revelation, and John of Patmos, at the place where there's going to be an end-time kingdom, an end-time ruler who's a Roman king who's going to be opposed to Jesus, who's going to be opposed to the Lamb. That's exactly what it seems to me. That's how I interpret that. I don't use the vocabulary of Antichrist because John of Patmos does not use the vocabulary. If there is one image that I think does fit what John of Patmos has in mind, is what Paul says in 2 Thessalonians. And we're out of time. So maybe next time we'll start there. But there in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, there I think actually is a pretty good analogy, seems to be, of what John of Patmos has in mind. To me, not Antichrist at all. That's, I'm not trying to be overly pedantic in word. I'm just trying to make sure I read the text. I don't want to smuggle in images they didn't mean, unless I find it persuasive. So does that make sense? We'll come back next time. We'll start on. Is that okay? Any questions or comments?